It's time for week 11 of the fantasy season. Do you know which quarterbacks or tight ends should be in your fantasy lineup? We're going to go game by game through every matchup of the week to tell you how we feel about all the players that matter at those positions. Don't forget, 4 teams are off this week. That is the Patriots, the Colts, the Saints, and the Falcons. At quarterback, there are plenty of players you don't really need to think about. These guys should be starting if you have them. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Pat Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Tua Tagovailoa, Dak Prescott, and Joe Burrow. At tight end, Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, TJ Hawkinson, Sam Laporta, and Dalton Kincaid. The first game of the week, Bengals at the Ravens on Thursday night. If you have Joe Burrow, you know you should be starting him. But if you're new to Underdog and you sign up, you can also take advantage of the new special. Joe Burrow just needs 1 yard and you get a free pick'em. That's for anybody who's just signing up for Underdog. You can click the link down below in the description or just download the app, sign up using code ENDGAME, and you get a 100% deposit match as well, up to $100. Now, in that Thursday night game, you're probably good with either quarterback and, of course, Mark Andrews. But now Cincinnati has a tight end that might actually be interesting to fantasy owners. Tanner Hudson. Is he a viable streamer?
Ooh, I mean, on the one hand, T. Higgins probably going to be out, so they may lean on him a little bit again. But on the other hand, it's a brutal matchup against Baltimore. I would prefer not to.
I mean, if you're desperate, sure, he's not the worst. It's interesting, he's gotten 12 targets over the last 2 weeks. But this is probably not the week, like you said, against Baltimore on the road. Probably going to look elsewhere. Cowboys taking on the Panthers. Now, Jake Ferguson has been on a roll just like that whole Cowboys offense. Is he entering almost must-start territory?
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely set and forget for me, meaning if you got Jake Ferguson, you put him in your lineup and you take whatever you get.
Agree, and this matchup is definitely not scary, so Jake Ferguson, a great start. Bryce Young, quarterback on the other side, probably not a great start.
No, can't do it. Not even in Superflex or 2 QB. You literally risk negative points with Bryce Young. Cannot start him.
I mean, he's been pretty bad lately against just kind of average opponents, and now going against the Cowboys, like there's no way. Steelers at the Browns. Well, let's start with Kenny Pickett. I mean, it almost feels like they're trying to take the ball out of his hands. Is he viable even in Superflex?
Not for me. I mean, maybe if you're desperate and you don't have any other options, but very, very low ceiling here, so I'd prefer not to.
I mean, he's barely relevant as it is, but on the road against Cleveland, I mean, he's barely above Bryce Young for me this week. Now, Steelers might get some good news. Pat Freiermuth could come back. He's been out for a while. If he plays, do you play him?
No, let me see him for a week in this offense. This offense barely even throwing the ball as it is. Not starting Pat Freiermuth.
Right, and again, look at the matchup. Against Cleveland on the road, no way, too risky. Now what about Deshaun Watson? This is interesting because the offense looked really good, led them from behind, but he still didn't have a good fantasy game somehow. Now what about David Njoku, the tight end?
Yeah, he's been getting targets, been involved. It's not a terrible matchup. I think he's a good start this week.
Well, I'm going to say Njoku might be one of my favorite tight ends this week because he actually managed to put up decent numbers last week in the toughest matchup on the road against Baltimore, and now he's got a far easier matchup. I really like Njoku this week. Next, we got Bears at the Lions. Could this be the week that Justin Fields plays? If he does, do you feel comfortable enough to put him in a fantasy lineup?
No, again, coming back from that hand injury, the thumb injury, we don't know how he's going to look throwing the ball, his grip, things like that. I think 2 QB Superflex, yes, but I'd prefer to wait in a 1 QB league.
Yeah, and again, this is a road game against Detroit, who I know their defense hasn't been that good the last couple of weeks, but still, not a great spot. I'd prefer just to sit him one more week. If it's another week of Tyson Bagent, what do you do with him?
Don't start him. I mean, just no upside here. Not starting him.
No, I think we've seen what he can do, and it's not that great, especially for fantasy. No. Now, what about Cole Kmet? Even with Bagent the last couple of weeks, he had put up some big games. Is he worth the risk?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the Lions, surprisingly, not great against the tight end, even though they do have a great defense. So I think Cole Kmet, a good start this week.
Yep. I mean, among all the tight end options out there, I think he can crack the top 12 in fantasy, so I think he's startable for sure. And then there's Jared Goff. Looks like we're going to get home Goff again against the Bears.
I mean, you got to feel good about that. At home against the Bears, yeah. Even in 1 QB leagues, you got to start Jared Goff.
Yeah. I mean, this offense is just putting up points every week, it seems. This game against the Bears at home, I feel like he's a great start. Chargers going to Green Bay to take on the Packers. Let's talk Jordan Love. Actually managed to score a couple of touchdowns, also threw a couple of picks. Did you see enough to make you think that he is fantasy viable?
I think I saw enough to at least semi-trust him in a 2 QB Superflex league because it is a good matchup against this Chargers defense. So 2 QB Superflex, sure, but I still don't want to go there in a 1 QB league.
I feel like, he's shown improvement. This offense just seems very different with Aaron Jones on or off the field. Maybe they do put up some points. He has shown something. I feel like in Superflex, he's a pretty solid start, but I can't stream him even in a 1 QB league. And then there's the tight end, Luke Musgrave. Kind of boom bust, it feels like.
Yeah, boom bust. I mean, he's okay. If you desperately need a streaming option, he'll work, but that's about it.
Yeah, I feel like he's always streamable, but again, can't really know what to expect in this Packers offense, so you can use him if you need him. All right, now let's talk Cardinals at Texans. Should be a very interesting matchup with these quarterbacks. Got Kyler Murray back from injury, and then CJ Stroud, who's pretty obviously going to be Rookie of the Year, maybe even MVP, who knows. But let's talk Kyler Murray. Was okay for fantasy last week. Does he get better this week?
I mean, you got to think he gets better. I think the encouraging thing here was his running. That was what we were worried about, and he looked great running the football. So he at least has that. But, I mean, you can't feel great about him just yet. I think streamable in a 1 QB league, but that's about as high as I can go.
Well, somehow it feels like I'm higher on Kyler than you this week at least because I think he should be really good. I saw everything that might kind of ease my concerns. You know, he threw the ball enough. He actually ran. Didn't look like there were any limitations on him. And I feel like this game might turn out to be one of the higher scoring games of the week. So I think Murray, if you got him, unless you have one of those no doubt must start quarterbacks, I'm starting Kyler. Even if, we don't think Kyler Murray is going to have a huge game here, maybe Texans defense, limits him from having a 300-yard game, whatever. I am almost sure he can go over his current line on underdog pick'ems. If you look early in the week, 231 passing yards. I mean, he already passed that last week. I feel like this game is going to be a shootout. Kyler Murray showed me enough to think he's going to be a solid starter. But again, if I'm doing my pick'em lines here, Kyler Murray higher than 231 seems like a no-brainer. If you just signed up or you're about to sign up, you can take that pick I mentioned earlier, Joe Burrow just getting 1 yard. Put those two together, and you have a good chance to triple your money. And then at this point, we might just say you have to start Trey McBride because with Kyler Murray back, he was a beast again.
Yeah, I think this week you definitely got to start him in this matchup against Houston. One of the worst against tight ends, you got to start Trey McBride.
Yes, you got to start McBride pretty much. Again, unless you have Kelsey, Andrews, Hawkinson, you start McBride. And then some people out there might just say, well, how can you not say CJ Stroud is a must start? Do we have to put him in your lineup?
He might not be in the no doubt category just yet, but this week at home against Arizona, you got to start CJ Stroud.
Yeah, again, unless you happen to have the Pat Mahomes, Jalen Hurts type, you have Stroud, just roll with him. And then again, there's Dalton Schultz. Didn't smash like he had the couple weeks before, but again, he's getting targets. This offense is great. They're at home. It's Arizona. I think I pretty much just have to start Schultz if I have him.
Yeah, Schultz feels like one of these tight ends, kind of like Jake Ferguson. You got him, you start him, you take whatever you get.
All right, next we got the Titans at the Jaguars. Let's talk Will Levis. Just still has yet to follow up his debut with anything even close to that. Is he startable even in a 2 QB league this week?
No, it's a good matchup on paper against this Jags secondary, but on the road again, hasn't thrown a touchdown since that first game. I can't do it. I'm not starting him.
I mean, I'll only say in a 2 QB Superflex league, he could be startable just because there's so many other quarterbacks that are worse somehow. But yeah, the ceiling is just not there. And then there's Chig Okonkwo at tight end. I mean, I don't know. I can't feel like there's enough there.
No, desperation here. Would prefer not to.
And then Trevor Lawrence, I mean, definitely one of the bigger disappointments last week. Maybe at this point, one of the more disappointing quarterbacks all season. Is he still startable in a 1 QB league?
I'll say this week he's streamable in a 1 QB league only because the matchup and he's at home, but definitely not a guy you have to start in a 1 QB league.
Yeah, I mean, Tennessee, it is a good matchup. Like you said, at home. I mean, he's got to bounce back, right? Well, look, there's enough other quarterbacks out there that I feel like you shouldn't have to start Trevor Lawrence, but if he's your best option, you can just because it's Tennessee. And let's talk about Evan Engram. Do you feel like he's still startable?
Yeah, this isn't a great matchup against Tennessee. They've been very good against tight ends, but Evan Engram, to me, one of these tight ends, kind of just putting in your lineup and taking what you're getting.
I mean, we have to recognize San Francisco, not just the fact that they destroyed Jacksonville last week, but also really tough against tight ends. Engram will be better. At least he gives you a floor, so I don't feel like it's a great game for him, but he's startable. Raiders going to take on the Dolphins in Miami. Aiden O'Connell, still the quarterback there. Do you have any interest in him?
I mean, at least he threw a touchdown finally, but I mean, barely any interest here. Only because maybe it's a shootout and maybe they have to throw the ball a lot, so barely in 2 QB Superflex, and that might be being generous, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, oddly enough, you're probably hoping for O'Connell's side that the Raiders get blown out, so you get some garbage time yardage. That's pretty much it. So very fringe super flex play. Now the tight end, Michael Mayer, did score a touchdown. So is he still on the radar?
Not really. I mean, he scored a touchdown, but what else? So not starting him.
Yeah, still just a deep streaming option. So only if you have nothing better. Giants going to take on the Commanders this week. And only because we review every starting quarterback in the league, let's talk Tommy DeVito.
How is Tommy DeVito actually a starting quarterback in the NFL? How is this even happening right now? There is no world, no nothing, no settings, no fantasy league, nothing where I would ever start Tommy DeVito.
Not even one of those like alternate timeline universes like in the Marvel movies, no.
Well, maybe in that universe he's really good. I don't know.
In this universe, it's a no on Tommy DeVito. Now, Sam Howell, on the other hand, in case anybody didn't know, leads the NFL in passing yards. That's right. Is Howell kind of a set and forget at this point?
Yeah, at home against the Giants, definitely start Sam Howell this week.
Absolutely, because one thing we know about this Washington offense is they're going to throw no matter what. So Howell is a great start this week. What about Logan Thomas, though? Is he solid start?
I would never call Logan Thomas a solid start. He's kind of involved. He could score. He's streamable.
Exactly. Just like most of the other Commanders skill position players, very unpredictable. Startable, but only if you don't have anything better. All right, next we got the Bucs taking on the Niners. So, Baker Mayfield gets to go on the road against the 49ers. Is that a recipe for disaster?
It certainly could be. I know he's been mostly okay to good this year, but in this matchup on the road, I can only say 2 QB Superflex only.
Yeah, there's some weeks you can feel pretty good about him. Like last week, this is not one of them. So, I mean, look, considering all the other quarterbacks we've talked about, in Superflex, he's probably one of your better second QB options, but that's it. And then Cade Otton, yeah, definitely a letdown game there. So against the Niners, I'll just go ahead and say there's no way.
Yeah, no chance of starting Cade Otton against 49ers.
Brock Purdy definitely had a get-right game. Looks like he's good to go against this Bucs defense. How high can you be on him?
I think I'm high enough to say even in a 1 QB league, he's a good start. At home against this Bucs secondary, I like it.
Gonna agree. Got all the weapons back. He looks good. Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot of quarterbacks still ahead of him, but if you need him, you can play him. And then George Kittle had a breakout game. Does he follow it up with another?
Maybe, maybe not. He's George Kittle, but if you got him, you're starting him.
Yeah, pretty much. Again, there's few tight ends that have his kind of upside. You can't guarantee a big game, but it's always possible. The Jets are going to take on the Bills in Buffalo. Is there a big game in store for Zach Wilson?
There's never a big game in store for Zach Wilson. When is the last time this guy threw a touchdown pass? no chance I'm starting Zach Wilson.
No, probably not, but still have to check. Now, Ty Conklin, the tight end, did have some good numbers last week. Is he viable?
Barely. I mean, streamable if you're desperate.
Yeah, here's the thing is he can get you some catches, some yardage, but where's the touchdown upside? So if you need some points and you're desperate, you could play him. Seahawks going to take on the Rams. Geno Smith at least came through against Washington, but now going on the road against the Rams, can he come through again?
Probably not. Don't feel nearly as good about Geno this week as I did last week. 2 QB Superflex only.
Exactly right. Don't feel nearly as good about him. Shouldn't be playing him in a 1 QB league. And then it sounds like Matthew Stafford will be good to go this week. So if he plays, how do you feel about him?
I mean, again, you can't feel great. He wasn't looking good before the injury. Now, again, kind of dealing like I said with Fields with this thumb, hand injury. How good is he going to be? How healthy is he? He's at home at least, so 2 QB Superflex only.
Right. I mean, again, still better than several quarterbacks we've talked about, but not in the top 12, even top 15 range for me. Seattle's defense, inconsistent, but not a pushover, so only Superflex. And then there's Tyler Higbee.
Yeah. When's the last time Tyler Higbee was even fantasy relevant? Not starting him.
No, I don't even remember how he's done recently, which tells you that it's nothing worth talking about. Vikings going to take on the Broncos. I mean, Josh Dobbs, what a great story. Continues to deliver. Can he deliver for fantasy teams this week?
I don't see why not. It's the Broncos. It's not a terrible matchup. He runs. He's been coming through. He could have Jefferson back. I don't think he's a guy I necessarily love in a 1 QB league. He's streamable, though, if you need him.
Yeah, I mean, we need to maybe stop doubting him. Not the highest ceiling ever. But look, I will just say this. He's a great streaming option, but this week there basically aren't any quarterbacks on bye that you should have been starting anyway, so you probably don't need him. But if you do, you can start him. And then on the other side, there's Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I mean, he's at home. It's the Vikings, not a terrible matchup, but I still can't say anything more than 2 QB Superflex.
Exactly. It's not a bad matchup for him, but again, only if you really need a quarterback, he'll be okay. And then they saved the best for last. The Monday night matchup is a rematch of the Eagles and the Chiefs. But you already know if you have either quarterback, you should be starting him. And if you have Travis Kelce, you should be starting him. And Dallas Goedert is out, so you're not starting him. All right, now that you know which quarterbacks and tight ends should be in or out of your lineup, don't forget about running back and wide receiver. All of that plus more is in this week's playlist.